Welcome to WCAT. I'm Kiki Latimer, and I'm your host for the Catholic Bookworm. Happy to have with me today Frank Ravanelli. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Author of a very cool adventure fantasy book called Pages of the Aduir.
Yep.
Journey to say it for me.
Yep. It's Peninsia Throne. Journey to Peninsia Throne.
Throne. I knew I'd get that.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me again.
How about you start us off with a brief prayer?
Of course. So I just got back from my pilgrimage from Lourdes. So I always like praying to the Lady of Lourdes. So in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now at the hour of our death. Amen. Our Lady of Lourdes, pray for us. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
So how'd you wind up in Lourdes?
So it was a really interesting story. So my brother was in the seminary for 1 year, and he met his best friend there. And his best friend was just ordained a priest last year, and he was going, and he posted on Facebook. So I immediately signed up. And when I signed up, the trip got canceled, and I got transferred to a new parish from Baton Rouge. And I didn't want to cancel my trip, so I still went. And to be honest, it was the most amazing experience in my life. I felt like I'm just almost like I'm way more connected to my faith now after going there. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to the entire world.
So did you travel by yourself?
So I did meet up with a parish there, but I did travel from Cleveland, Ohio to France by myself. Yes.
So you live in Cleveland.
Yep. I live a little bit south of Cleveland. It's in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. So it's about 35, 45 minutes away from Cleveland. It's like south, I would say southeast.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You're an author. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I come from a really big family. So I actually have five brothers. I have two dogs, and they're both boys. So I grew up in Northeast Ohio, and I'm very close with my brothers. I actually live with my older brother at the moment. I went to the University of Akron, where I actually majored in marketing and business. I work in a kind of a financial role for my full-time job, but I also do writing on the side. So I recently had this passion for writing. I wouldn't say recently, but my entire life, I always wanted to develop a story, even when I was younger. So I'm very, very adventurous. I love traveling, and I'm a very family person. I love being with my brothers and playing competitive sports, even though sometimes I think I beat them in certain sports. But yeah, that's pretty much about me.
Don't quit your day job too soon, I tell authors. But I loved your book. I read it over the last couple of days. You want to tell us a little bit about it, just to start us off? Maybe show us the cover, which
Oh
kind of
yeah, for sure. So here is the cover, pages of the uh it's really cool. It has a diamond 3D on it. I love the design. I had a great graphic designer. Um and there's the back of it too. It has a little.
Who was your designer?
So it was actually a funny story. So I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina last year, and I met a coworker that was so talented with graphic design, and he always wanted to take on side projects after work. And one day I was trying to find a graphic designer, which was kind of a struggle at first. And then I messaged him, and he said he would love to take on the project. I gave him a couple clips of my book, and he created the first round, and I absolutely loved it. It displayed exactly what I needed. So I still have him doing side projects for me, but I think he did an amazing job on it.
Does he want his name out there on social
Uh,
media?
I don't know yet, but I'm definitely going to contact him soon if he does.
All right, cool, cool.
Yeah.
So tell us about this mystical land that you bring us into.
Yeah. So it's a land called the realm of Innrealm. So it's on the planet of Erdina. So there's two continents. There's Innrealm and Jugoria. So basically, the land right now is plagued in darkness. It's ruled by the Dark Lord Voloc, and right now, basically, he controls both Innrealm and Jugoria. But when God first created, and my God's name Aminia, when he created the land, he prophesied in the constellations a foretold hero that would be sent down born of an unnatural birth to kind of eradicate evil from the land. So it's really about a story about a prophesized individual that is destined to kind of almost defeat the Dark Lord Voloc.
So obviously we have flavors of your Catholicism.
Yes.
That are here. So tell us a little bit about how that affects how you write. Because you've got these realms, obviously, of good and evil, very clearly distinguished, unlike sort of Harry Potter, where good and evil sort of get all intermingled and mixed up. You have this clear distinction.
Yeah, and it really did fuel my writing because understanding there's a lot of evil out in the world, and I really want, and I think certain novels they kind of lack this part of it. I always make it that the good side is so much more powerful than the evil. There is evil out there, but when you trust in our faith and in God, you're always going to triumph over the evil. And that really helped me write because I really wanted to I did write about aspects of evil that are really relevant today because evil today is not so much, oh, I'm going to conquer the land. Evil today is trying to almost eradicate the Christians. It's really not, it's like really just not good. And that's what I kind of wrote about, and it kind of fueled my writing.
Very early on, you make a comment about, where do I have it here? That very often the stories are sort of dismissed as myth, which I found very interesting. Many people today dismiss the Christian story as myth.
Yeah.
It's just a made-up story. It's just pretend, and that myth doesn't matter in any way. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So the beginning of, yeah, that is a very interesting. Yeah. When I first started writing the prologue of the story, there were the first creation were 10 women that ruled the land. And throughout time, their teachings and their ruling was actually considered myth because people just didn't believe it anymore. When the kings and the queens started ruling the land, they kind of just said, okay, we're the ones that created the law of the land. The women back then were no longer a thing. That was just all just kind of a conspiracy theory. And I really wanted to keep that relevant in my story.
I also like at very early, I think it's in chapter 4, you say, sort of set forth, in time, clarity will come. And I like that idea that, very often when we set out, I mean, the journey of our life, but also smaller journeys that we embark on, your journey to Lourdes, often when we start out, things are kind of murky and we're not quite sure how it's going to work out. And like you probably thought at some point, should I really go to Lourdes if the trip was canceled, maybe that's a sign, but you head out. But we have this thing with grace, I think, that in time, clarity will come. That the Lord does work with us in time.
Yeah. And I think that's really relevant into my life too, is at first you're just kind of like, sometimes you can be confused. It's like, why do I not know my greater purpose? And my characters feel like that too. They don't truly understand what their life will become. And in time, they will have that clarity. They will go on these adventures. They will discover things about themselves, maybe forge friendships that will really enhance and maybe have them have a better understanding of what their purpose is. And that's something that I myself has experienced too as a writer. I didn't really know. I was kind of confused at times. Well, what should I do in my life? And then in time, the more experiences I went through, I understood that my purpose is all God's, it's all part of God's plan. And that's really what my characters go through too. At first, they're very hesitant, but now when they experience the adventure, they kind of get this clarity.
And sometimes that clarity comes through a great deal of pain and destruction in your story.
Yeah.
And in our lives.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree.
You have a statement, I think it's here in chapter 11, where you say, embrace every moment as an opportunity to grow. A beautiful line.
Thank you. Yeah, that's actually my favorite line in the entire story, because there are times that I feel like too, when you don't really know why you're in a certain situation or you're going through a struggle, and this can be through work, through your friendships, personal life, that you don't understand maybe why you're going through some kind of suffering. And I think this is when you grow the most internally when you're going through this suffering. Maybe when you're in an uncomfortable situation, you're really growing internally. And that's what my character said to the main character. It's embracing the journey, understanding that you're only going to grow stronger when you adventure out. And that's actually my favorite line in the whole book because it's so relevant, I think, to everybody's story in life.
Just before that, I have here you wrote, and I found this was one of my that was that these two together. Every moment you resist the temptation to go back to the ordinary is the moment you are advancing your inner self to the utmost. Face the unknown with eagerness.
Yeah, I totally agree with that one because it's more so how I picture this line is it reminds me of times when people are very hesitant about maybe moving out, like moving into different areas in the country. For myself, it was when I lived in Northeast Ohio and I had an opportunity in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was really I didn't want to stay in Cuyahoga Falls, but I was very scared about moving. And this is what the characters kind of experience too. They want to stay in their ordinary lives, but they understand when they get out, that's is when they're going to enhance their inner selves the most, when they make these friendships with people they've never met before. So I really like that line because it's very similar to what I notice a lot of my friends go through too. They don't want to, they're scared, they might be a little hesitant about making that next move. And it's almost a temptation to stay in the ordinary. But when you get out, you can experience extraordinary things.
Especially if you're really working with prudence and discernment. You're going to the sacraments for grace to kind of give you that guidance. Because obviously, I mean, we don't want to venture into the wrong unknown,
Yeah, exactly.
so we're looking for, okay, which unknown should I head to? I remember years ago I had visited Holy Apostles College and Seminary in Cromwell, Connecticut. And it was just wonderful, and it was about an hour and 15 minutes from where I live. And when I got home, I thought, oh, I'd love to work there, just
Hmm.
even part-time. That would be a really cool place to work. And I said, I wish I had the nerve to just write to the rector and say, how would you like me to work there part-time? But that was like a really scary thing to do, just out of the blue. He'd met me over lunch. And a friend said to me, well, what have you got to lose? By, sending a letter sort of into the unknown, like, what have you got to lose? So I was like, right, what am I really, just be brave and do it. So I sent that email, and the rector responded, we'd love to have you here part-time,
Oh, that's amazing.
1 or 2 days a week. And that developed into 6 years there that were just amazing. Like you're saying, I met wonderful people, made friends, lifetime friends, and Sebastian being one of them. And so this came out of that. And so I couldn't foresee any of that. It was just really, really scary at first to
Yeah.
take that first step. Yeah.
Yeah, the first step can be very, very challenging. And that's such a beautiful story because, yeah, it was all part of God's plan. And if you didn't write that email, you wouldn't have maybe made those friendships. So if you don't embrace the journey, you might not really, that's what I mean by enhancing your inner self to the fullest, is you're going to meet so many wonderful people by making that initial step like you did.
Right. And it's amazing how then different pathways, as in your story, different pathways open up, different doors appear that you don't expect to walk through. For my first year at Holy Apostles, I stayed sort of across the street in one of the dorm, sort of like a visiting house kind of area. So I had my own space, which I liked. And then one day somebody came to me and said, we're not letting you stay over there anymore. We've decided to move you 2 miles down the road. You're going to be staying with this elderly couple, Barbara and Andy O'Keefe. And I was like, oh man, this is the worst. I have my
That's
own space right across the street from where I'm teaching. I was totally annoyed and totally aggravated with the whole idea. But Sister Mary, the next thing I knew, I was being shipped off. Barbara and Andy picked me up, this elderly couple in their 80s, pick me up, take me to their beautiful home on the Connecticut River, hand me the key to the door the first night they meet me. Andrew was this amazing Catholic lawyer. He'd been a lawyer for like 60 years. And so for the next 5 years, I stayed with them and their little dog Mitzi. And I consider Barbara and Andy like two of the greatest gifts of my entire life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Time with them was like amazing, amazing. They were just these devout Catholics. He had stories that would, curl your ears.
Yeah.
And I became almost like a daughter to them. And it was an amazingly beautiful love friendship that developed. But man, I didn't want to go into that unknown at all.
Yeah.
Like, no, no.
I know it's scary at first. You're like, I don't know if this is the right choice. And then look how that worked out for you, is that you created amazing friendships. So it is, the first part of it's very hard about going into the unknown, but then you realize it's part of God's plan. It's just so beautiful at the end.
Yeah, it's amazing what God does have planned, and you see that develop in your book, um, for your characters. They're really venturing out of their comfort zone. They are going into what feels like dangerous territory. You've got these creatures that arrive. What are they called? Gadens?
They're the Geodons.
Geodons. Okay.
Yeah.
And you said that I was kid. They're sort of related to the orcs.
Yes.
Which I love that you tapped into the Lord of the Rings with that.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
It's priceless. It's like, oh, we know about them. What
Yeah.
do you say? Gaodons?
It's the Geodons.
Geodons. Okay.
Geodons. Yeah.
These are like really nasty creatures.
Yeah. And the sad part is they used to be peaceful too. My imagery there is fallen angels. So the Geodons, so there are certain orcs, and I kind of read into fantasy a lot. There's certain orcs are peaceful. And when the Geodons kind of they went down a bad path, they kind of revolted against the Kredak, which is the early women that ruled the land. And then they were kind of almost like deformed in a way that they just kind of revolted against the way of life. And they're really they're just kind of like monstrous creatures that all they do is hate. And that's what I really wanted to embrace the idea of fallen angels with that.
Well, you did a good job of it.
Thank you.
They're quite horrible.
Yeah, they're pretty scary. There's times in that book where I was a little bit scared writing it.
One of the themes that you mentioned quite a bit throughout the book is the concept of stress. And at one point you say stress is not sacred, do not stress.
Yeah, and I really like this because I do my daily rosary. And when you're under stress or anxiety, you have to understand that that's not coming from God. And when I'm stressful, it's like a suffering almost that I need to offer up because I understand this is not from God and these anxieties. So I really put that in the book because I want my characters, when they're undergoing stress, they have to understand that if you just trust yourself into Mary, into Jesus, all this suffering can be offered up, and that's what I really wrote about that in the novel.
So speaking of Mary, since you brought us to Mary, so you introduce us to Mary very sweetly through the character of Queen Eliza.
Yes,
Yeah.
my favorite character.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's funny because this is a very amazing story, and I remember writing this chapter, the exact day, the exact moment. So I was really in tune with the sacraments. I was going to confession. I was attending mass, and I really was kind of on writer's block actually. And then one day I was writing the chapter, and she was not even supposed to be in this novel. And then I started writing, and then I was really praying to Mary. I said, help me guide this book. Help me come up with these creative ideas. And then I noticed when I started introducing this queen, it was her. I was writing about her. And every single interaction was just like, okay, this is the Virgin Mary. And it's very similar to what I think J.R.R. Tolkien was actually aiming for when he wrote about Lady Galadriel in The Lord of the Rings. So she's my favorite character because I really write about how evil is so terrified of her. They won't even mention her name in the book. So I really made her a powerful character, and she is the most powerful character in my novel.
Um, towards the end, I mean, I don't want to discuss the actual story too much because I don't want any spoilers here,
Yeah.
but towards the end when they tap, that your main character has to, is in a bad situation and realizes it's now or never to tap into the power of Mary, and that she's given him that grace that she's specifically given to him. I was reminded of how Mary is often called the terror of demons. I don't know if you
Yes.
know that title, Terror of Demons. And if you look up that title of her, there's some really like downright, almost nasty depictions of Mary of being like,
Yeah.
like, um, I gave a talk at a confirmation talk several years back, and I referred to Mary as badass, and they haven't
Yeah.
invited me back.
She is.
But I said, we have this sort of always these demure pictures, statues of Mary. I said, but Mary's considered the terror of demons. She's badass.
Yeah.
She's got grace that can really kick butt.
Hmm.
And that really comes out in your story. That, there's power there when we tap into the Mother of God.
Definitely. And that's what my characters really see is when they're undergoing that stress, like in that particular part, and it's really relevant in my life too. When I was undergoing stuff that was not godly, when I was going through stress, anxiety, I just pray to Mary, and she just whatever thing was bothering me, she immediately helps alleviate it. She is so powerful, and the evil in my book is so unbelievably terrified of her. And I don't really want to give anything away, but uh, they're even afraid to sometimes even say her name. I don't think they will even say her name because they're so terrified of her. And that's what I really want to portray in this novel. Because, like you said, she's awesome. And it may be in most stories, it just shows how beautiful she is. But I wanted to show how evil is so scared of her.
Um, in chapter 17, you really bring out concepts of our free will that, within your story, you say everyone in Erdina, which to
Yep.
us would be here, Earth, has a choice, that we have a choice between good and evil.
Hmm.
And your characters are making that choice, and we are as well.
Yeah, definitely. And some of my characters, they're almost very tempted to abandon the journey. It's like, why do I have to go on this journey? Maybe I can just live a quiet life and not maybe discover my destiny. And that's something that I feel like we go through. Sometimes we experience life that we might want to go down the easy route, or maybe the route that is not of God. And that's where we can very easily fall into sin. And I think that's very relevant in my book is that they're very tempted to maybe go into that route, but they understand that their greater purpose and the God's plan, which God in my book, his name is Aminya. Aminya's plan is beyond their own. And I really wanted to emphasize that in my novel.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we even sort of sense, well, I know what the right thing to do is, but I don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes the right thing to do is really the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's like even the saints all underwent a lot of suffering. And when you're going to do the right thing, you might experience a lot of suffering, but it is the right route to go through it if you're listening to God and going through His plan.
During the pandemic, I took care of a good friend of mine who was very elderly. She was blind and mentally ill, and could be extremely horrible to deal with. And I was kind of the last person left standing who would still deal with her. And she had gone blind, and I occasionally, I mean, it was horrible. I mean, this was a woman who, until we got her meds right, would call like 40 times a day, 40, 50 phone calls a day,
Oh,
screaming
wow.
and yelling and angry and disoriented. And before I got her into an assisted living, half an hour from me, she lived like an hour from me. So I was back and forth two or three times, and it was exhausting. And she wasn't always overly grateful. There was a lot of screaming before the grateful came. And at one point, there were people who said to me, like, why are you doing this? Like, why are
Hmm.
you bothering? She's horrible. Um, and there was just that deep, deep inner understanding. It's me or nobody. And if I put her into a nursing home, they'll just sedate her and kill her off.
Yeah.
No one would put up with this behavior. And it was just the right thing to do. It
Hmm.
was just you just had that inner grace and knowledge. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Um, so I did it.
Yeah. And
And
that's so beautiful.
in the end, it was a deep blessing.
Hmm.
But there were days where, I used to have really long hair and I pulled it all out. But yeah, sometimes we just know what the right thing to do is, but it's going to be really hard and miserable.
Yeah.
And but the grace comes.
Yep. I
Oh,
totally agree. You're going to go down challenges in your life like you did there, taking care of her, that it is the right thing to do, but the grace you receive is just amazing. I was hesitant about going on a pilgrimage with people I didn't know, and it was something I was like, maybe I won't go. I can get my money back. But then I understood when I was there that was the right thing to do, and it brought my not only myself closer to God, it brought my entire family. I can see the graces pouring out from this trip, so it's just amazing that, like your story right there, it's just like you didn't know, and that was your free will, and that was you listening to God, that you understood that that was the right thing to do, and the grace you receive from it is just amazing.
it's pretty cool. That is that whole thing, eye has not seen, ear has not heard what God has prepared for those who love him. And we really can't, it's very difficult to see ahead very far and to see what the plan is. But there is a good plan for each of us. That unfolds in your book. You know, people meeting up with other people, moving forward, danger being averted. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it's really relevant in my book because they meet up with so many different personalities. And at first, I mean, you can see there's a lot of conflict. They don't really, some personalities don't mix together. I think you notice in those in the characters in Luix and Lias, they're brothers, but two distinct personalities. But they understand that Lewis has just such an innocence to him, where Lias is more, I don't want to be on this journey, but it almost is like the perfect combo because they complement each other perfectly.
Those names you chose, I mean, they're about light. Is there, yeah.
Lewis and
Yeah.
Leox, yeah. So they're
Yeah.
actually, it's funny because they're named after my younger brothers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so they're very much. I really took their personalities and kind of molded them into the book, and I love the names too. I was at first, I was when I was coming up with names, I just started really just like, really trying to create something unique, and I really like those two because I think it was a perfect brother combo, and they're very funny. They're my. I really enjoy reading about them.
Yeah, there is quite a bit of humor in your book, some in the conversations at times.
Yes, yes. I agree. There are times when they don't, especially when they're undergoing stress. Uh, Through the stress, there might be something that is maybe a joke that is said, and I kind of feel like that almost alleviates stress. When I'm under stress with my brothers or we're fighting, someone might say a joke or do something funny, and it always kind of alleviates stress. Understand that okay, it's not that big of a deal what we're going through. So I really wanted to pinpoint that in my book too.
When my mother was dying, some 20 years ago, but my brother and sister and I, we spent a week at the hospital, sort of sleeping in the waiting room of the ICU. And, it was very stressful. And she was dying. So it wasn't happy. And we used humor to get through that. I mean, we just laughed our heads off through the whole week, and that was how we got through the stress. And there was just really sweet ways in which we'd see like God sort of, just honor the humor that was there in the family and the closeness between the siblings in this very stressful and difficult time. It was really fun, strangely, to spend that time together. But we tapped into our humor to deal with the stress. Yeah.
Yeah,
I did
and
have
I think
one, It was the week before, it was a week, 2 weeks before Christmas. And at the end of the week, I had to go home to get ready for Christmas. My mom actually died on Christmas morning, which was
Oh,
beautiful because Christmas was her favorite day of the year.
oh,
Um, but just before I left, we'd been there a week and we'd been going up and down, in the elevator a lot, which sometimes would put your equilibrium off after you're in elevators like all day long for 5 or 6 days. And there was the ICU wing was like over here, and the children's ICU wing was down here, and in between was a nurse's station. And my sister and I were at the nurse's station, and I looked down the children's wing, and I saw this giant animal cross from one room to another. And I was really startled, and my
oh
sister,
my goodness.
what's wrong? And I said, I must be losing it, but I just saw a moose. And then my sister looked at me and she said, a moose? We're on the fifth floor of the hospital. And I said, in upstate New York. And I said, I swear to God, I just saw a moose. And she said, sort of like, okay, now your humor is just like gone over the top and this is ridiculous. What do you mean? You just saw a moose
That
cross
would
the
be.
corridor. And so now the nurse at the nursing station kind of was catching hold of this. And she's like, what did you see? And I said, I swear to God, at the end of the children's wing, I just saw a moose. And she said, oh, that's not a moose. That's Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer.
Oh my gosh. That's a good one.
It was
That,
this guy in this giant reindeer outfit who had crossed the hall.
that
And
is
I turned
hilarious.
to my sister and I was like, I told you I saw a moose.
Yeah, I bet I would
So
probably make that mistake too. That I could definitely see that being a moose, especially
I just saw
from
a
far distance.
giant brown four-legged animal across the hall.
That is too funny.
So we had, despite the fact that we were in a very painful and difficult situation, we had a beautiful week with my mom and the three of us, sleeping on the waiting room floor, and making the best of a difficult situation. And your characters do that, again, I don't want to, the spoilers, I don't want to say too much. It's a wonderful story. But you do place them in a lot of very difficult situations and sad situations.
Hmm.
Um, at first, I thought, well, this is kind of a children's book, like younger teens, but there's a lot of death in your book. What age group would you recommend the book for? I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. At first, I was going to write more of like a Chronicles of Narnia audience, like a little bit younger children's book. But then I really didn't want to do that because I wanted to write. There is life in these stories. There is going to be tragic events and there is going to be violence. I mean, this is set with sword fightings going on, so it's not going to be. There's going to be violence in it. So I would say my age group is probably late high school. It's really in college. So like 18 I mean, 18 through 20, 25, 30. So it's really around that age group. There is parts in it that I wouldn't be comfortable with children reading because it is really violent. So I really want to aim for the college audience. And that's right now my marketing plan is to aim to college students, especially Christian students.
Mm, just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about later on in the book. I think it's chapter 21. Your name, Uriel? How
Yep,
did you say
Uriel.
Uriel? Uriel goes into anger. And I found it very interesting that as soon as he goes into anger, he loses hope and goes into despair.
Yes.
I found it very interesting that you linked those two things, and talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so when he's going through that anger, because he's experiencing so much pain in that chapter, and he almost, when he's going through this, he just doesn't have any hope anymore. He's like, my life's not working out like it should be, and that's very relevant in everybody's life when they're going through this immense anger. They're like, this isn't working out like I want it to be. This is sad. Like I don't know what is going on anymore, and that's what he's going through because he's experiencing so much pain at that moment that he just loses all hope. Nothing's going as planned. His whole entire journey almost feels like for nothing to him.
And it's there that he hears, he really starts to hear the Dark Lord. He really starts to hear Lord Voloc saying, and the other guy who's in cahoots with him. I don't want to mention names too much
Yeah.
because I don't want to ruin your story. But sort of the idea of end your worthless life. You're not who you thought you were. You don't have the power of God with you that you thought you had. Um, Nobody really cares about you. Your family doesn't. Your friends don't. You really don't have anybody who truly loves you. Like you're worthless.
Yeah.
Give up.
Yeah.
That's interesting that's when you go into despair, when you go into anger and despair, that's when you can hear the bad messages in your life.
Yeah, it's very that's a very powerful chapter that I wrote, and I really like that chapter because it's very linked to when people go through like immense depression. It's they think they're worthless. They almost don't even know what they're going through, and they don't know what the purpose of it is. And that's when you can get it can get very dangerous because that's when you're almost listening to demons and Satan almost telling you you're not worth it. And that's what my character kind of goes through in that part.
There was a line later on. I want to go back because that's when he remembers to tap into the power of Lady Eliza. That's what his lifeline is. But shortly, we'll come back to that. But you say refuse to engage in any communication with the enemy.
Yes. Yeah. So I like that
Right.
because if you are going through that and you feel like you're hearing like you feel like everything's coming at you, that is not from God. That is going to be from demonic activity, that can be from Satan, and you do not engage with the enemy. And that's what I like about it. If you hear this, you just immediately you turn to God and say, and I myself, if ever I feel anxiety or any of that, I turn to Mary and Saint Joseph. Saint Joseph is actually a terror of demons too. So I really want to make that in there because you pray to them. You do not listen to these outside forces that are basically telling you that you're nothing. And I really like that because you never want to engage with the enemy. And that's why I kind of wrote about that.
I mean, we live in a society that messes around, obviously, with tarot cards and Ouija boards and, all kinds of stuff connected to occult and the darkness.
Yeah.
And so I thought that line, refuse to engage in any communication with the enemy. Like, don't even go there.
Yeah.
Um, but like you say, also those little, sometimes Satan's is much quieter than that.
Hmm.
Those little tiny messages that get whispered. You can't do this. Don't go, you're not good enough to give that talk. Somebody just this morning who's thinking about being an altar server, a gentleman, an adult, said, I said, I hear you're thinking about being an altar server. And he said, yeah, but I was when I was a kid and I messed up once. And, I'm afraid what if I mess up again? And I said, well, what if you do? Like, so what? That's how
Yeah.
you learn. But you could hear that little tiny message that was coming through, you might not be good enough.
Yeah.
And, and we all have that. I mean, it's scary. I mean, this is one of your first interviews. It's scary to think about doing an interview, right?
Yeah.
Put yourself out there with your books. Those are scary things to do, but um, we are protected when we do what we've, really discerned is the right thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a great point because I was scared at first to even write. I was at first even thinking about doing a pen name. I was just so scared about putting my name out there. It's when you write a novel, it's you're really marketing yourself and your name and your face. And that was something that like those tiny voices, like you even heard, like it was there. But then I really listened to God there and said, no, this is meant to be. I have to write. I have to put my name out there. And that's what I think people go through is they kind of almost have doubt in themselves. They hear these voices and they're like, yeah, maybe I'm not the person to do this. Maybe I don't have the skills. And that's when you just got to say to step aside. And I like to say, tell that temptation to step aside and embrace God's purpose and God's plan for you.
I mean, I hear my friends saying, "What have you got to lose?"
Yeah,
Like,
I love that.
well, it's like like my reputation, my self-esteem, the little shred of it that's left.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think we don't realize how powerful grace is.
Hmm.
And especially, staying close to the sacraments, especially the Eucharist and confession gives us, constant recourse to that grace.
Yes, I agree. I think that's a very good example because I was talking to my little brother the other day about how powerful confession is. I go to confession, I try to almost every 3 weeks to every month. And I just noticed that you almost feel, before you go into confession, you almost feel like weighed down. I feel like when I'm in a state of sin, I feel like weighed down. I feel like something is wrong. When I get out of confession, I feel lighter. I just feel so amazing after confession, and I feel like that's the grace, and that's all the sin just gone from my life. So I think that staying in tune with the sacraments is really just such an amazing thing, and it can really transform your life like it has transformed mine.
Most of my life, I've gone to confession, every 3 or 6 months or so. But just recently, I've started going weekly, with the purpose of really working on some particular things in my life, and to be able to see them more clearly. And it's amazing how it's helped. It's really helped me to focus on, um, and it's interesting, not so much sins of commission, but sins of omission,
Hmm.
things that I don't do that I ought to do.
Yeah.
And that's been really interesting, in my life, to just get that extra grace and that clarity, that in time clarity comes, that God works with us in time. So that's been wonderful. Going back here, in this
Yeah.
in this despair, that your main character goes into, he's ready to kind of like give it all up. He remembers those words, in darkest times, remember Lady Eliza.
Yeah.
Um,
That,
that Marian voice.
yeah. And that part is so amazing because he is just, like I said, he is at the lowest. He can't get any lower at that point. He feels like even his friends, he feels like, are not his friends anymore. And that's when he understands, okay, and that's when almost like God is with him, Mary is with him. And he remembers that conversation he had with one of his friends. I won't say who it is. And he knows that she is the one to fight this evil with him. She is going to fight this evil with him. And that's when he understands that, okay, this enemy has no chance against me when I have Mary, God, and Jesus on my side. So I really love that part of the book because you see so many people that might not, they're in that point of their life. They don't think that their life matters. They think that I don't have any friend, I don't have support, but really they have the best support in the entire universe. They have Jesus, Mary, they have everything. So that part was, to be honest, that part was probably the hardest part of the book to write because I think it's just so relevant and it's very powerful religiously.
I mentioned earlier, I can't remember whether it was during the interview or when we spoke earlier, the idea that, a lot of times in fantasy novels, it's the idea that good and evil are equal. They're
Yeah,
equal forces. We see that in Star Wars, there's the good and the bad, but they're equal forces.
yeah.
Um, but in Christianity, Catholicism, we understand that they're not equal forces, that the power of the good is far greater than the evil. And this comes out in your book. The power of the lady, Eliza, is far greater than the dark power, even though the dark powers are much flashier in our lives. We see them much more easily in some circumstances. Like you're saying, we forget that we can call out for help.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's a great point because, like you said, Star Wars. I mean, there are parts of it like if you join the Sith, you're going to be more powerful than the good, and I don't particularly like that. And I wanted to, and like you said, it like the evil is more flashy. And that's kind of like life today. The evil side and the sinful side, it might seem more flashy. It might seem like you're getting a better life, but it's not at all. The good is always going to triumph it, and that's what I really wanted to key on in my story. Is even though the Dark Lord Voloc might control the land, he has no power over the Queen Eliza. He has no power over Aminia, the god of the universe. So that's what I really like about the book is it might seem like the best route. Oh, I can join the dark side. I can gain all this materialistic stuff. I can advance in life easier. But no, that's not the good side. That is the evil side, and it has no power control over the good. So I really want to emphasize that in the book.
Yeah, it comes out very well. I mean, and in our own lives, we sometimes forget, Satan is a creature.
Yeah.
It's not like creator versus a different creator.
Hmm.
Um, God, Lucifer, Satan is a creature, you
Yeah.
know, a powerful creature, but a creature nonetheless, an angel, but a
Yeah.
creature, and sometimes we lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Especially when we look around, I mean, such a fallen world with fallen nature, with wars and, devastation that we see. It's easy sometimes to forget that, good has already thrown the last stone, on Calvary. It's easy to forget that.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. The good has already won the battle. And that's what I like about my novel, too. It's only God can create. The evil side can't create anything. And I think that's something that my evil side is very envious of. They can't create life, they can't create anything. They have no power like God does. God's the creator of everything. And I really like that too, because it really emphasizes that. And what we see in Christianity, Satan can't do anything, where God is the ultimate creator. So I really wanted to make that imagery tie into our Christian beliefs.
Towards the end, we've always been told like never look back. Lot's wife is told don't look back, you'll turn into a pillar of salt. And obviously that, don't look back, just regret and wanting something that's in the past because it will turn us into a pillar of salt. We'll just be weeping the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
But you talk about looking back, the possibility of looking back with gratefulness and awareness of growth in our lives.
Yeah, and that's something I really wanted to add because that is something I hear a lot is don't look back. But then I notice in my journey personally, every time I look back, I understand how much I have grown in faith and personally. And I always want to look back and say, okay, I don't want to be that person anymore. I love who I am today. And it really helps me kind of almost grow in my faith when I look back and say, I'm never going to go back to that point I was at when I was going through suffering, when I was in a life of sin. I look back at that and say, wow, it's like I will never let that happen again. And that's why I like that line because you do almost sometimes want to look back to understand how much you have grown throughout time. So that's why I kind of referenced that in that book.
Yeah, it's a good reference because I mean, gratefulness, gratitude is an antidote for so many things. It's an antidote for sadness, and for
Hmm.
loss, and for so many things, and gratefulness for the growth we've seen, even through the rotten things we've done. God right straight with our crooked lines, you
Yeah,
know. And being grateful for that. God took something rotten that I did, but he managed to bring some good out of it despite myself,
yeah,
um, and to be grateful for that. Um, and just being grateful that, we for every day, because it is a gift, our
yeah.
time is a gift. Um,
I agree. Every time I look back, even at the pilgrimage, there's so much growth, and I'm so grateful I went on that. I was hesitant at first, like I said, but then looking back at it, I'm like, this was like the most amazing experience in my life, and the friendships I now have because of this, and now the graces that I'm receiving. It's just I'm looking back at that at all, and I'm so grateful that I experienced it.
Yeah. Years ago, oh gosh, maybe 20 or more years ago now, a good friend of mine who's a film director, he called me and he was still just getting started. And he said, Kiki, he said, I got this weird question for you. Somebody's offered me a trip to Thailand.
Oh
They're
wow,
going to pay for like a 2-week trip to Thailand, he said. But like, I'm like really scared of the very idea of like going to Thailand for 2 years. It's like totally out of my comfort zone. And I was like, what are you crazy? Just pack your bags, kid, and off he went to Thailand for one of, just an absolutely magical experience of his life. And I think he actually wound up working with people and doing film work through some of the contacts he made. But it was the journey of a lifetime. He said it was amazing. But, again, and he was a person who I wouldn't have expected to be afraid. But he was,
Hmm.
he was still young, just out of college, probably like 26, 27, somewhere around in there. But the idea of a journey to Thailand, he didn't know, like your journey to Lourdes, he didn't know what was going to happen there, you
Yeah.
know. So, but he had
Yeah.
a beautiful, beautiful trip. Yeah.
Yeah. It's scary at first, and that trip to Thailand, I bet was scary. I've never even been to Asia, so I can see that being a scary journey to embark on. But I think when you go, you just can see so much open up in your life, and I feel like you grow so much when you go on those journeys. So I always recommend people to go on adventures or travels like that because
Yeah,
you really
just go.
experience so
I would
much.
say just go. The
Yeah,
more you can see of other cultures, the better you understand your own. Um, the more you see how other people live. I mean, I've been to India, I've been to Haiti, I've been to Italy, I've been to quite a bit around the United States. And I find the more you see how other people live, how other cultures are, even within the United States, we have different cultures going
yeah,
on. But the more you see that, the more you understand yourself. You meet people, you make friends with people you never dreamed you could be friends with. Um, I don't know if you've ever seen, I always mention the film here, The Railway Man,
I don't
Colin
believe
Firth.
so.
If you haven't seen The Railway Man, see it.
I'll have to check it
But it's
out.
really a film, it's a true story, and it's kind of a sleeper. Most people have no idea. I don't know why it didn't do well. It's one of my favorite films. But it really shows you what happens when you venture out of your comfort zone, how God can work with that. And yeah, so check out The Railway Man.
That sounds interesting, and I love that theme too. It's like when you get, and we took a class not even for work. It's like it's so beneficial to get out of your comfort zone because that's when you're out of your comfort zone. That's when growth is occurring. So I do love that theme. It's one of my favorite themes in life.
Well, this is a story about a man who goes way out of his comfort zone
Oh wow,
and how God uses it for
yeah,
good. And it's a true story. So really amazing.
I'll
So
have to check
much
that
we
one
could
out.
talk about, but I don't want to spoil your story. Your story was delightful. I loved reading it, even though I had to read it very quickly in the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah,
It was a fun fantasy story combined with Catholicism. So I loved it. Is there anything, I know you sent me questions and I have other things when we could talk about, but I don't want spoilers for people that are going to really enjoy the book. Is there anything you'd like to mention that we didn't get to that's really important to you about the book?
I would say that, yes, I would say that something that was very important to me about the book was I remember there was times when I first had this idea in college to write a book. And I feel like when I started writing, I didn't have the best creative ideas. I was just kind of writing just random stuff that wasn't really, to be honest, it wasn't very good. But then I noticed the more, and I think we just briefly touched about it. We did actually touch about getting out of your comfort zone. The more experiences I went through, the more places I traveled, the different cultures I met. That's what really helped fuel my writing and meeting new people, getting different perspectives on life. It really helped me understand, like, okay, that makes sense. And it really fueled my writing at the end of the day, going to these new places I've never been. And I think that was like one of the key factors. And I think, like I said earlier, too, staying in tune with the sacraments. That's what I needed to do to keep this writing going. Because when I was in when I was in a life of sin, I couldn't write. There was just nothing there. But then when I was in tune with the sacraments, I felt like all of these creative ideas were coming out. So I really like that about my novel, and I think that's why uh, that's why all these ideas are coming out right now. So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, when that grace starts to sort of funnel through you, you know it.
yeah, definitely.
It's really a beautiful sort of process that happens. Years ago, it was after the earthquake in Haiti. I thought to myself, it was about a year later, and I thought, sooner or later, somebody's going to write a children's book about it. It might as well be me. So I
Yeah,
started for 3 months. I worked on this story. I diligently worked on this story, and I sent it to my publisher at Educavision at the time, and they wrote back and said, basically, we hate it. It's horrible. And but they said, but try again. And
Yeah.
that made me even more miserable because I didn't really have another story in me. Like that was the one story I had in my head. And so I thought, oh, great. Not only, have I failed miserably, but I don't have another story in me. And that night, as I was falling asleep, I had a dream. And in the dream, there was a storyteller with a drum, and he was walking into sort of the earthquake camps in Haiti, and he was patting his drum, and he was calling the children, and he was saying to them, "Tell me your story." And I saw this whole thing, and I pulled myself out of sleep, and I said, "I got to remember this in the morning." And in the morning, I wrote down what I saw in that dream. And that was the book that was published, Heel of the Hand.
Oh my goodness.
So that was the story. A week
Wow.
later, the ending of the story just came to me as grace. And so 2 weeks later, I'd worked on the other story for months. 2 weeks later, I sent the new story that had come to me in a dream, and my publisher said, "We love it," and that was
Wow.
published. Yeah. So I trust. I will slowly learn trust the grace. Just
Yeah.
trust the grace and dreams. I mean, you think of God does work also through our dreams. So
Yeah.
sleep well.
Yeah. Listen to your dreams. Yeah, I noticed that a lot. That's such an amazing story because it's so relevant. It's like when God comes through and gives you these ideas, it's like write them down and then you create a really amazing story like you did. So I love that because that's really what I did too. It's like I had these ideas and one day I was like, okay, I need to write all this. So that's what I did.
Just write it, get it down, write it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And if sometimes also if an idea doesn't work, put it aside, save it for later. But I tell young people, don't throw it out. Don't
Yeah.
throw it out. It may not work in this story, but it might work in the next one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. That's who I am. I think I have some side stories in my novel that it's not in the current novel, but it's just on a blank doc I have and I just wrote it all down because it might work in the next novel. So I did the same thing.
So I want to talk about that next one because, as yesterday was a very busy day and I realized I had 40 pages left and I rushed home from mass this morning to finish the 40 pages. And as I was driving home, I was thinking, how's he going to wrap this story up in 40 pages? It's
Yeah.
400 pages. And all of a sudden you're going to wrap it up in 40. And all of a sudden I started reading this morning to get those. And I got about, 20 pages read. And all of a sudden I went, he's not wrapping this story
Yeah.
up. So tell us about this. This is one of a trilogy, perhaps?
Yes. So I envision this definitely being a trilogy, but I could foresee it being almost max. I would hope I can get it all done in 7 books, but I can see this being from 3 to 7 books. Right now, I know for sure that the next book, I already have all the ideas written down, and I have kind of an outline, which I didn't make an outline for this book, but I did make an outline for the second book, and I can see the second book almost being 2 books. So this is definitely going to be a trilogy. I envision it can be up to 7 books. I wouldn't want to go further than that, but definitely going to be a big series. And there's going to actually be side books too of side stories because the history of my land dates back very far, and I would like to write about that too because there are some really unique side stories I want to write about.
Cool, cool. So Frank Ravanelli, Pages of the Aduir, Journey
Uh,
to, say it
yeah,
again.
it's pages. It's pages of the Adur. You almost got
Adur,
it. Yep.
Adur. Okay.
Yep.
Journey to
Penin-
Peninsia.
Peninsia Throne. You got it.
Do you have a title for the next one?
Not yet. So I actually thought about that too. When I was so the other day and I was telling my little brother about this and I wanted to see if I still have all the because I wanted to write again. I was got kind of bored one night. It was a couple weeks ago and I started writing the prologue to book 2. And then I was like, oh my goodness, how did I write 350 pages? Because this is hard. But I don't have a title. I have an idea. I don't want to release it yet because the title is going to be very unique. And the next book is going to be very powerful. I think even more, it's going to be really tragic too. But I really envision the next book being pretty long. But I don't have a title. I have an idea of a title, but I wouldn't want to release anything yet for it.
Can you show us the cover once more of this one?
Yep, of course. Yep. Let me know if you can see. That's a good.
And beautiful. And tell us again where we can get it.
So right now, you can get it on my website, which is just frankravanelli.com. I envision it being on Amazon starting in January. I used to have a Seller Central account, and I just got to work through it again because I'm not a huge fan of selling on Amazon, but I have done it. But right now, I'm going to be selling it at local bookstores near me, and you can also buy it on my website where I can ship it to you.
Wonderful. Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. End us with a prayer.
Yes, of course. Um, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now at the hour of our death. Amen. Saint Michael, the archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much. This has been delightful, and hopefully I'll get a chance to speak with you again.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. This was a great experience, and I'm glad to get my novel out there.
Great. Good luck. God bless.
Thank you. Bye.